PR Connections Radio presents. This episode of Thinking into Results is brought to you by Classy Communications PR and Advertising. Classy Communications provides public relations and marketing solutions for businesses, professionals, and nonprofit organizations. They can deliver the true meaning of your business with press releases, social media marketing, web development, email marketing, book publishing, and much more. Wherever your potential clients are, they can help you connect with them. Visit classycommunications.net to learn more about their suite of services that can help your business stand out from the rest. Classy Communications is your solution for business success.
I guess you can be very successful without one, and probably some people do. But I would not have accomplished anywhere near what I have accomplished without a mentor. I have had a number of mentors, and my whole life has changed dramatically. I went from going nowhere to having a business that operates all over the world. If you want to win in a big way, you want to get a mentor. It's almost like getting a direct pipeline from their mind to your mind, where you're gaining all their wisdom, all their experience, and all the studying that they've done over a number of years. And like that, you get it all in a short period of time. Are mentors important? Well, I'm going to tell you, mentors literally changed the course of my life. Let's take a look at what Thinking into Results is and what it could do for you, how it came about. You see, my life had changed dramatically. I went from earning nothing to earning over $1 million a year. And I was sitting one day and I was thinking, how did all this happen? Do you know, I was reading Think and Grow Rich. I was studying Earl Nightingale's material. But a lot of people have read those books and studied Earl's material. And they weren't accomplishing what I was accomplishing. So I had to ask myself, what am I doing so different? You see, I had been raised to believe if you're going to earn a lot of money, you've got to be really smart. I was earning over $1 million a year, and I didn't think I was that bright. I was also raised to believe if you don't go to school, you can't win. Well, I hadn't gone to school. I went to high school for about 2 months. I didn't have a good job. I owned the entire company. If you want to be happy, healthy, and prosperous, it's all here. Thinking into Results is going to show you how to get it. If what I've said really triggered something in your mind and you're thinking maybe, contact the certified PGI consultant, hit the button, leave the information, do yourself a favor, sit down and talk to them about what this program can do for you. This very well could be the decision that will change the rest of your life.
Thank you, Bob. Welcome to our Wednesday podcast of Thinking in Results. And I want to acknowledge our new sponsor, S&J Mentoring. We really appreciate their support with our weekly podcast. And my co-host today is one of my favorite people, John Gage. He's a voice-trained actor, and he told me he could take time out of his day. So I really appreciate you being on our podcast today, John. And can you tell me a little something about what it's about?
Well, you know, the podcast today is called No One Has Seen the Mind, or Have They? You know, people went a lot of years picturing your mind looking like your skull, you know, because they never really saw it. And in 1934, Dr. Thurman Fleet had created a picture. May I introduce the stick figure? And what he did is he showed, and the reason he created this was because it shows how our mind and body is separated. The mind comes in two forms, conscious and subconscious. And of course, you got the cute little round body. But, you know, that's what their picture of the mind was for many, many years. And I know you know quite a bit about it, Sid, and can you tell us a little bit about what's going on here?
My pleasure, John. This is at the heart of thinking in the results. To change your results, you have to change your thinking. And we're talking about your mind. And most people think your brain is your mind. But I like to say the mind is energy. And we see it in our little stick person here where we divide just to have I want to say a picture in your mind's eye once you studied this, like John and I. This is how I see people. I know that I can tell when they're in their conscious mind and the subconscious. The conscious mind is the thinking mind. And it's sort of the gatekeeper for what's going on. We've been trained to live by our senses: seeing, hearing, tasting, touch, and smelling. And those are the 5 ways we get information. And we're trained to respond to everything that's coming at us, good or bad. And that's where or positive or negative. That's where the conscious mind, when it's aware of what we're talking about here, they can accept or reject new ideas, new feelings coming in. And I like to say, to recognize the negative thoughts, impressions that are coming in, they'll trigger you, and then not to bite. Don't respond to that trigger. It takes practice and experience to not be triggered. A quick aside, I used a little mantra that I would repeat over and over when a negative thought showed up, something on the radio, something on TV. And I just have a little 7-word mantra that I use. Not to get religious, but be still and know I am God. And I would repeat that 3 times. And then after a while, when I started, I had to do it 7 times. But that's very effective for me. Find your own mantra, a positive thought that you can repeat to not go down the rabbit hole with something negative. But that's enough for my opinion right now. John's got a great opinion. Seeing the mind and the brain like a computer and software. Can you share that with us, John?
Absolutely. Well, for many years, you got to think how effective this little stick figure was. Let's start there before I get into the complicated version. But the little stick figure was very effective because it kind of demonstrated the duality of the work that the brain does. The 2 jobs that it has. Taking information in, filtering it, and then processing it. And that's how a computer works. We see each other now, and we're 3,000 miles apart. But the great thing is my computer and your computer are taking all the same information, processing it, sending it into that little CPU, the conscious mind. That CPU is taking it and going, okay, we need to send it here so we get this picture and this sound coming out on this end. So those good folks that are on the other end can hear and see what we're saying. So that is kind of how the brain functions. You have the conscious, the filtration, so to speak, where you're going to take what's coming in and, like you said, take that negative and push it aside, because ultimately we want to be happy. We want to move forward with what our process is, and thinking about what we want is a good way to do it. I know we discussed how goals are like flying an airplane or driving a car, right? So what you have to do with your brain is you have to take that conscious mind and stay focused on what's out there. Because you don't look at the front of your car when you're driving. Why? Because when you look at the front of your car when you're driving, you're not paying attention to anything else out there, and you don't know when you need to adjust. You're still going to the same place, but how are you going to adjust if you don't know what's happening ahead of you? And that's why our mind works like a computer, because our computer is looking at the end result and taking everything that's coming in and say, okay, how do I get to this end result? That's how the subconscious, how do I get to the end result? And I like to say the mind, we cannot see the mind, but we can see the product of the mind. It's all around us. The books behind me, the books behind you, the doors, these are all products of the mind. Somebody envisioned that and saw that and went, okay, how do I take it from here and bring it into the real world as I see it? So they have to, there's a big process that goes on there. And I know when you look at a computer, it can be really complicated. The brain, they've done so many studies now. There's so many neural pathways in a brain. It literally, the CPU is a mimic of it, because those neural pathways run in multiple directions, all to get to the central point so that they can produce an end result. And in this case, we have visual and audio, and we get a picture of what's coming on. And that's the other thing that this stick figure does. It teaches you that we think in pictures. And I know I've said this many times, but if I ask somebody, Sid, what does your car look like? You're going to tell me, well, if I was asked, well, John, what's your truck look like? Well, my truck has about an 8-inch lift. It's got 22-inch tires. It's a big black dual cab Toyota Tundra with a 5.7 liter V8, and it sounds manly when it drives down the road. That's a pretty vivid picture. I didn't think those words. I saw my truck. What do you think? Because I know you had an epiphany a while about pictures. So tell us about that a little bit.
Well, first I have to respond. You asked me the question my car, and you went into yours because you're really know all that.
Oh, my truck.
Your truck. No, mine's white.
Okay.
That's all I need to know.
What brand is it?
Well, it's a Toyota, but
okay.
Camry. But the fact is, when you said my car, the last time I saw my car, I just put it in the garage.
Mm-hmm.
I walked to the door, they lowered the garage door, and I'm looking at my car. Just to talk right now, I know that's what I'm seeing.
Right.
So the funny story, John, to share, we won't talk about my age, but
that's
maybe 10 or 15 years ago, Bob Proctor, who you saw in the video, who created Thinking in Results, I was at a seminar and he says, we think in pictures. And all of a sudden I sat up because I remembered distinctly years ago, I can't remember the lady's name, but there's a book out about visualization. And I couldn't get it. I thought visualization took an effort. It was like meditation. I'm picturing things all my life, but it wasn't until I started working with Bob, thinking in pictures, and then thinking in the pictures I want to think. And that's going to lead me into when we talk about goals. Bob's story was when he first started studying Think and Grow Rich, which he's been studying for over 50 years. His mentor gave him a card like this with the goal on it. He said, write down a goal which Bob did. You heard him talking about his in the video. Put $25,000 on it.
Right.
Had no belief he could do it, but Ray, his mentor, believed it. So he went on his belief. And because he had this picture of making money, not knowing how, but now his antenna was up and he heard someone say there's money making cleaning offices. And the rest is history. Well, thoughts are things, thoughts are vibrations. And when you've got your goal, it's at a higher vibration than you are. If not, you would already have it. So you're down here, you're looking at your goal up here, the vibration. And every time you think about it, you're vibrating at the same frequency, attracting to you the things that would help you reach that goal.
Well, you mentioned something interesting about what Bob said. You know, somebody all of a sudden, somebody mentioned there's money in cleaning buildings. When you realize how vibration works and how the brain works, I've talked about this before, but your thought waves, they can measure it now. And if they ask a person to think about something, they can see the brain doing all the little computer routing, and then that thought leaves, and then something comes back in. There's a response out there that we don't necessarily hear. We see, we receive, and it's very interesting when you start thinking on that higher wave, that higher function of your goal, how things are open. And that's why you have to be constantly looking at the goal. Like I said earlier, you have to be constantly looking at the goal so you know how to adjust. So when that other thought comes in, you're like, oh, I need to do that. Would you agree?
John, oh, yeah, yes, 100%. You just gave me a thought.
Uh-oh.
We're doing this podcast.
Mhm.
We've been doing it since
last I checked. Yes, sir, it is.
We started last June. I'd never done a podcast. It was something foreign. I know people had them and people were watching them, but I knew nothing about it. And then Dana and Guy Dawson, who are running PR Connections, asked me if they could interview me on the podcast. Well, I have an ego and I like being interviewed. I said, sure. And it was, I wouldn't say effortless, with no preparation because I'm the guest. And Guy, a master interviewer, asked me some questions. I would answer it. And then he would ask another question that was based on what I just said. And we went through that in a half an hour. It was just like that. It was over. And I thought, I want to be a good interviewer. So I'm still learning. John's very patient with me, and you're patient with me if you're coming to watch us. But we're learning, getting better. And I really, really enjoy doing this. But there's something else that we didn't touch in earlier. Well, actually, two things I made a note on. The John talked about our imagination. Nothing on the planet would be here without the imagination in somebody's mind. And we'll get into desire next week. But he has the idea, he's pictured in his mind, and at some point motivated to take action because the picture's pretty clear in their mind to manifest it. So imagination, very important. And something else we didn't mention when we were talking about the conscious and subconscious mind, and that is the paradigm. I'm sure you've heard of it, may not know the definition that we use, but we describe your paradigm as a collection of habitual habits and thoughts, literally that you don't have any control. That's your programming. And often our programming has some flaws in it. And thinking in results is a program that help you identify, quote, the flaws in your paradigm, your habits that are preventing you from getting what you want. One of Bob's quotes my favorite one is, if you can tell me what you want, I can show you how to get it. And I like to say, then the second shoe hits the floor, and Bob says, if you do exactly as I tell you. So thinking in the results is a very proactive program
Mhm.
to learn the concepts of these things we're talking about, but being able to integrate them into your life with worksheets and writing out the things that you're learning and how it affects your life, how you're responding, and seeing areas that you can improve on. So today was Mr. Stick Person.
Mhm.
And I think John, you've got a couple other thoughts you'd like to share.
Well, we have talked a lot about pictures, and vision boards. A lot of times, people who put up vision boards, they're like, I thought about the house I want. I went and looked at a whole bunch of different houses, and I like this house. And I took a picture of it and I put it on a vision board and said, I want a house just like that. And 5 years later, I ended up buying that exact same house because that's the house. I want a house. This is the house I want. And it's pictured in your mind. So you got that computer programming, taking all of that, filtering it in, and feeding it to the subconscious, which says, okay, we live in that house. Okay, what do I need to do to get there? Because I have to live in that house now. So the subconscious is driving your habits so that your life can be the life that you picture it to be. So when we say, has anybody seen the mind, or have they? In reality, you have, because your mind is literally about pictures. If we didn't have people thinking, a lot of times you see things that are an inspiration because, say, somebody had an idea, but they didn't know how to bring it to fruition. Like in Star Trek. Cell phones came about because of Star Trek. The first cell phone that came around, the person said, oh, wouldn't it be cool to have wireless communication? This phone, I was a computer geek in high school, and I won't say how many years ago that was, but it was, and this phone is more powerful than the most powerful computer we had in the school. It has more power in it than all the computers combined in our school. This little piece of technology. And we wouldn't have had it if it wasn't for shows like Star Trek, where somebody says, man, that would be cool. And then somebody goes, how can I do that? So now he's rewiring his computer to program his subconscious to do that. And now it's nothing. The young people, they understand cell phones like nothing, because it now becomes a standard part of computer work, like email and that kind of stuff.
John, I'd like to share a story that I heard years ago.
Sure.
From a couple of sources, and that is how the iPhone came into being. And the story was that Steve Jobs was having a staff meeting, and at that time they were flip phones, or maybe not, but someone's phone rang.
Mm-hmm.
So, isn't that irritating? And Steve says, "What is that? What's our job here? What does Apple do? We make things that are fun for people." And from that thought, well, let's make a phone that's fun. And it's very possible, if not likely, that someone on that team remembered in Star Trek and had a picture of some of the things that a phone can do.
And that's absolutely it. And what we're saying, everyone, is what you can do with your own mind is limitless. And I know that's a concept that us humans have because we're in such limited bodies, we can only do so much. But our mind is all vibration and thought, and it's this wonderful working computer that we've had all along. I remember growing up, okay, I'm going to age myself here a little bit, and they would say we only use 10% of our mind. I disagree. I think we use 100% of our mind that we allow to be used. If we expand on how our mind works, it's like a computer. Computers haven't changed size. Since we're comparing this to computers, the computers have been the same size the whole time. Like I said, this has 200 and almost a little over a quarter gig of information. And when I was in high school, we got a 512 megabyte computer and went, how are we going to fill it with all that space? Now I download programs that are 200 megabytes. So it's all put on the same space, because in reality, we can make the space work that we have for what we want. And our brain has unlimited resources if we allow that to be part of the process.
Thank you, John. You remind me of a couple of quotes. One of them is, necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
And I had not thought about that, but we're talking about the iPhone and how it was created. And then the fact that we keep getting updates and more things. I'm on a 12. I'm way behind the curve here because I've had it a couple years. I remember when I had a 9. But the other, another quote that Bob likes, Steve Bow from Metropolitan Life, and this is quote, God's gift to us is more talent than we can use in a lifetime. And our gift to God is to use and develop as much talent as we can during our lifetime.
That's a great quote. And I think that's really a good spot for us to thank everybody for watching. Please like and share because it does help. But I have some exciting news. Next week, we're starting a new series, aren't we?
Oh, yes.
13 steps to success. Step 1, a burning desire. You like to talk about that. Be in love with your goals. And remember that here, Thinking with Results, if you go to www.sidmastery.com, we can show you how to accomplish your dreams.
Thank you, John.
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.